The day my mother demanded I stop exercising because my fitness made my brother look bad was the day I realized I never had a family. I only had people who needed me to stay broken so they could feel whole. It took me 7 long years to transform from the overweight kid everyone mocked into a healthy, confident man. But the cruelest voices never came from strangers. They came from my own brother Derek, with our mother Sandra cheering him on. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you have ever felt like the outsider in your own home, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. If you have ever been the scapegoat in your own family, stay with me because this story might feel painfully familiar. My name is Madeline, though most people call me Maddie. I was born a chubby baby, round cheeks and soft belly, the kind that relatives pinch and coo over. My brother Derek came into this world 3 years before me, lean and angular even as an infant. From the very beginning, our mother Sandra made the differences between us crystal clear. Derek was her golden boy, her perfect son, the one she dressed up and showed off at every family gathering. I was the other one, the afterthought, the child she seemed to tolerate rather than celebrate. When I turned 7 years old, my parents started fighting constantly. Every night, I would lie in bed listening to them scream at each other through the thin walls of our house in suburban Ohio. The arguments were about money, about trust, about everything and nothing at all. I did not understand what was happening, but I felt the tension in my bones. Food became my comfort. I would sneak down to the kitchen after everyone fell asleep and eat whatever I could find. Cookies, leftover pasta, slices of bread smeared with peanut butter. Each bite temporarily filled the emptiness that was growing inside me. Sandra noticed my weight gain immediately. But instead of concern, she offered criticism. "You eat too much, Madeline. Why can you not be like your brother? Look at Derek, so slim and handsome. What is wrong with you?" These words became the soundtrack of my childhood, playing on repeat until I believed every syllable. Derek absorbed our mother's attitude like a sponge. By the time he was 10 and I was 7, he had learned that mocking me was not only acceptable, but encouraged. He would call me names at the dinner table while Sandra laughed or simply looked away. When I was 10 years old, my parents finally divorced. My father, Robert, packed his belongings into cardboard boxes and moved to Arizona. He promised to call every week to visit every holiday to stay present in our lives. Those promises faded like morning fog under harsh sunlight. The calls became monthly, then sporadic, then almost non-existent. Sandra wasted no time assigning blame for the broken marriage. "Your father left because you were too much trouble," she told me one evening while I sat at the kitchen table doing homework. "If you had been an easier child, maybe he would have stayed." I was 10 years old. I believed her completely. Derek was 13 when the divorce happened, and something shifted in him. Perhaps he felt emboldened by our father's absence, or perhaps he simply recognized that there was no one left to defend me. He began openly ridiculing me in front of Sandra, testing boundaries that did not exist. "Fat pig," he would say. "Lard bucket. Walking earthquake." Sandra would hear these words and smile or chuckle softly or say nothing at all. Her silence was its own form of cruelty. By the time I was 12 years old, I weighed 180 pounds. I was short for my age, barely 5 feet tall, carrying weight that my frame was never designed to hold. My knees ached. My breathing was labored after climbing stairs. I sweated through my shirts at school. The bullying extended far beyond our home. At school, I was an easy target. Kids would oink when I walked past. They would leave candy bars on my desk with notes that said, "Maybe this will help you feel better, fatty." They would choose me last for every team in gym class, groaning audibly when forced to include me. But the worst moment happened when Derek and I attended the same school. He was a freshman in high school while I was in 6th grade, both buildings connected by a shared cafeteria. One afternoon, I was sitting alone at a corner table eating my lunch quietly, trying to disappear into the plastic chair beneath me. Derek walked in with his group of friends, spotted me across the room, and pointed. "Hey, everyone," he shouted loud enough for the entire cafeteria to hear. "Look at my fat pig brother over there. He is probably eating his 3rd lunch right now." Laughter erupted from every direction. Even students I had never met were laughing at me, this stranger, who had been publicly humiliated by his own brother. I grabbed my tray and ran out of the cafeteria, tears streaming down my face, food forgotten. That evening, I told Sandra what happened. I stood in the kitchen still trembling, waiting for her to comfort me, to defend me, to promise she would speak with Derek about his behavior. Instead, she sighed heavily and said, "Well, maybe if you lost some weight, he would not have to say those things. It is not his fault you make yourself such an easy target." I went to my room that night and cried until my pillow was soaked through. That was the moment I understood with perfect clarity that I was completely alone in my own home. My mother was not my protector. My brother was my tormentor. And my father was a voice on the phone once every few months, distant and distracted, already building a new life that did not include me. The years crawled forward, each one heavier than the last. By the time I was 15, I had grown to 5 feet 8 inches tall, but my weight had climbed to 220 pounds. I moved through the hallways at school with my head down, shoulders hunched, trying to occupy as little space as possible despite the considerable space my body demanded. Derek was 18 now, a senior preparing to graduate, already accepted to a state university 2 hours away. Sandra treated his impending departure like a national tragedy. Her precious firstborn leaving the nest. She planned a grand going-away party, inviting extended family members. I barely knew neighbors, Derek's friends, everyone who might witness her glory as the mother of such a successful son. The party was held on a Saturday afternoon in our backyard. Tables covered in checkered cloths, platters of food everywhere. A banner that read, "Good luck, Derek," strung between 2 oak trees. I stayed in the periphery, helping carry dishes from the kitchen, refilling drinks, making myself useful in ways that kept me invisible. But Derek noticed me. He always noticed me when he wanted an audience for his cruelty. During the toast portion of the party, when various relatives stood to wish Derek well in his future endeavors, Derek grabbed the microphone from his cousin and cleared his throat dramatically. "I want to thank everyone for coming," he said, grinning widely. "And hey, at least when I leave, Mom will not have to buy as much food, right, Maddie?" He pointed directly at me, standing near the back of the crowd, holding a stack of paper plates. Every single person in that backyard turned to look at me, and then they laughed. Aunts, uncles, neighbors, friends, even people who had never spoken an unkind word to me in my life, laughed at my brother's joke. But the loudest laugh came from Sandra, who threw her head back and cackled as if Derek had just delivered the most hilarious comedy routine she had ever heard. I dropped the paper plates and ran inside the house, up the stairs, into my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I collapsed onto my bed and sobbed so hard I thought my ribs might crack. No one came to check on me. Not a single person at that party wondered if the overweight kid was okay after being publicly mocked by his own brother. I lay there for hours listening to the sounds of celebration drifting up from the backyard, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life. That night, after the party ended and the guests went home and Derek went out with his friends to celebrate further, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my reflection in the mirror across the room. I hated what I saw. I hated myself for being weak, for being fat, for being the family joke. Dark thoughts crept into my mind, whispering terrible possibilities. What if I just disappeared? Would anyone even notice? Would anyone care? My eyes drifted to my nightstand where a framed photograph sat. It was a picture of me and my father from years ago, before the divorce, before everything fell apart. We were at a carnival, both of us smiling, cotton candy in my small hands. I picked up the photograph and held it to my chest. Whatever happened between my parents, whatever distance had grown between my father and me, I could not leave this world without at least trying to find something better. I put down the dark thoughts that night, but I never forgot how close I came to letting them win. The following year, when I was 16, something unexpected happened. A new student transferred to my school in the middle of the semester. His name was Tyler, a tall kid with red hair and freckles who walked with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. During lunch on his first day, he scanned the cafeteria looking for a place to sit. His eyes landed on me alone at my usual corner table, and he walked over without hesitation. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked. I was so stunned that someone voluntarily wanted to sit with me that I could only nod. Tyler had his own story. He told me over the following weeks that he used to weigh nearly 250 pounds in middle school. Kids called him Stay Puffed, after the Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. He was miserable, depressed, barely making it through each day. Then his family moved and he decided to reinvent himself. He started going to the gym, learned about nutrition, changed his eating habits completely. By the time he arrived at my school, he had lost over 60 pounds and gained something far more valuable. He gained self-respect. Tyler never judged me for my weight. He never made jokes at my expense. He just treated me like a normal person, like a friend, like someone worth knowing. It was such a foreign experience that I did not know how to process it at first. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop for Tyler to reveal that this was all some elaborate prank. But days turned into weeks, turned into months, and Tyler remained genuine. One afternoon, we were sitting in his car after school talking about nothing and everything the way teenagers do. I found myself opening up about my family, about Derek, about Sandra, about feeling like I did not belong anywhere. Tyler listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed my life forever. "Your body is not the problem, man," Tyler said, looking me directly in the eyes. "The problem is the people who made you believe it is." Those words hit me like a truck. For 16 years, I had internalized every insult, every joke, every cruel comment. I believed I was the problem. I believed I deserved the treatment I received. But Tyler planted a seed of doubt in that belief system. Maybe, just maybe, I was not the broken one. When I was 17, I made a decision. I was going to change my life not because my family wanted me to, not to prove anything to Derek or Sandra, but because I deserved to feel healthy and strong. I had been working part-time at a local pizza shop for almost a year, saving money for no particular purpose. Now, I had a purpose. I walked into a gym called Iron House Fitness 3 blocks from my school and signed up for a membership. The first few weeks were brutal. I could barely complete a single lap on the treadmill without gasping for air. I did not know how to use most of the machines. I felt the eyes of other gym members on me watching the fat kids struggle, probably wondering why I even bothered. But Tyler came with me every single session. He taught me proper form for basic exercises. He showed me how to create a simple workout routine. He never let me quit, even on days when I wanted to walk out and never return. When Sandra discovered I had joined a gym, her reaction was predictable. "Do not waste your money," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "You will quit in a week like everything else you try." Derek was home from college for winter break when he found out. "A gym membership," he said, laughing so hard he nearly choked on his beer. "That is absolutely hilarious. You will still be fat no matter what you do, Maddie. Some people are just meant to be fat." I looked at both of them, my mother and my brother, united in their certainty that I would fail. And something hardened inside me. I would prove them wrong if it was the last thing I ever did. The transformation did not happen overnight. It happened over 2 years of relentless dedication, 2 years of showing up to the gym, even when I did not want to, 2 years of saying no to the junk food that once controlled my life. From 17 to 19 years old, I became a different person. I went to Iron House Fitness 5 days every week without exception. I studied nutrition like it was a college course, learning about macros and meal timing, and the difference between good carbs and bad carbs. I started cooking my own meals, buying groceries with my pizza shop earnings, preparing containers of grilled chicken and vegetables and brown rice that I would eat throughout the week. Sandra's kitchen was a minefield of temptation. She cooked heavy Southern-style meals nearly every night. Fried pork chops swimming in grease, macaroni and cheese made with 3 different kinds of cheese and a stick of butter, biscuits slathered in gravy, pecan pie for dessert. I stopped eating her cooking entirely, politely declining dinner invitations and retreating to my room with my prepared meals. She took this as a personal insult. The weight began melting away. 220 pounds became 200. 200 became 180. 180 became 165. My body transformed in ways I never imagined possible. Where there had been soft flesh muscles began to emerge. My arms developed definition. My chest became broader. My face, once round and puffy, grew angular and sharp. For the first time in my life, I could see my jawline. At the gym, I met a trainer named Marcus who took me under his wing. Marcus was in his 30s, a former competitive bodybuilder who now dedicated his life to helping others achieve their fitness goals. He saw something in me, some potential I could not see in myself. "You have got good genetics under there," he told me one day after watching me deadlift. "Keep going. You could be really impressive if you stick with this." I stuck with it. I stuck with it when my muscles screamed in protest. I stuck with it when progress plateaued for weeks at a time. I stuck with it when Sandra made snide comments and Derek came home to mock me during holidays. By my 19th birthday, I weighed 165 pounds of lean muscle. I had a six-pack for the first time in my life. People at school and at work started treating me differently. Girls who never knew I existed suddenly wanted to talk to me. Coworkers at the pizza shop complimented my dedication. Strangers at the gym asked for advice on their own fitness journeys. For the first time in 19 years, I was proud of the person looking back at me from the mirror. Then Derek came home for good. He was 24 years old, freshly graduated from college with a degree in business administration and absolutely no job prospects. He had spent his university years partying more than studying, coasting on charm and Sandra's financial support. When he walked through the front door with his suitcases intending to move back into his childhood bedroom, I barely recognized him. Derek had gained significant weight during his college years. His once angular face was now round and soft. His stomach protruded over his belt. He had to weigh at least 210 pounds, maybe more. When Derek saw me, his reaction was almost comical. His jaw literally dropped. He stood in the entryway, suitcase in hand, staring at me like I was a ghost. "Madeline," he said, using my full name for once instead of Maddie or one of his cruel nicknames. "You look," he paused, searching for words, "different." Sandra appeared behind him, and her reaction mirrored his. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open. "Madeline," she said slowly, "you look so different." Neither of them said I looked good. Neither of them congratulated me on my transformation. There was no pride in their voices, no happiness for my achievement, just shock, and underneath the shock something darker, something that looked a lot like resentment. Over the following weeks, the dynamic in our house shifted dramatically. Derek could no longer mock me for being fat because I was no longer fat. But instead of abandoning his cruelty, he simply changed its form. He became passive-aggressive, making bitter comments under his breath, rolling his eyes whenever I came home from the gym. Sandra joined him in this new strategy. Suddenly, she was very concerned about my health. "You are getting too skinny, Madeline," she would say, even though I was at the healthiest weight of my life. "That is not natural. It cannot be good for you." I ignored them and continued my routine. But Sandra was not content to simply criticize. She began what I can only describe as a sabotage campaign. The meals she cooked became even more unhealthy than before. Fried chicken every other night, macaroni and cheese drowning in oil, brownies and cookies appearing on the counter constantly, cases of soda stocked in the refrigerator, ice cream in 3 different flavors in the freezer. She would call me down for dinner and act offended when I declined. "I cooked this for the family," she would say, her voice dripping with false hurt. "You are being rude by not eating with us." When I politely explained that I had my own meal plan, she escalated. "You think you are better than us now," she accused. "Just because you lost some weight, you think you are too good for my cooking," Derek chimed in immediately. "Yeah, you have become so arrogant since you lost weight. Acting like you are some kind of fitness model. It is pathetic." One evening, I prepared a salad for myself and left it in the refrigerator while I went upstairs to shower. When I came back down and took the first bite, something tasted wrong. The salad was drowning in oil far more than I had added. I confronted Sandra, who shrugged innocently. "I just added some olive oil," she said. "It is healthy. You are being paranoid." After that incident, I bought a mini refrigerator for my bedroom with my own money. I kept all my food locked away where no one could tamper with it. I cooked my meals when Sandra was not in the kitchen and cleaned up immediately afterward. I was essentially living as a tenant in my own family home, someone who shared a roof with these people but nothing else. The confrontation I had been dreading finally arrived on a Thursday evening in early March. I had just returned from the gym, still wearing my workout clothes, when Sandra called me into the living room. Her voice had that dangerous, calm tone that I had learned to fear as a child. "Madeline, we need to talk. It is important." I walked into the living room and found Derek already seated on the couch, arms crossed over his chest, face twisted into an expression of barely contained hostility. Sandra sat in her armchair, the one she always occupied when she wanted to deliver lectures or pronouncements. She gestured for me to sit in the remaining chair positioned directly across from both of them. Madeline Sandra began folding her hands in her lap. I have been doing a lot of thinking and I need you to stop going to the gym. The words hung in the air between us. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. I am sorry, I said. What did you say? You heard me, Sandra replied, her voice firm. I need you to stop this gym nonsense. It has to end. I looked from her to Derek and back again, searching for some sign that this was a joke. Why, I asked. Why would you want me to stop exercising? Sandra sighed heavily as if I was being deliberately obtuse. It is not fair to your brother, she explained. Derek is going through a very difficult time right now. He is struggling to find a job, struggling with his confidence. And you walking around this house flaunting your body is making him feel terrible about himself. Derek nodded emphatically. Yeah, it is. Like you are rubbing it in my face every single day. Walking around in your tight shirts, acting all superior. It is making my life miserable. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what I was hearing. My mother wanted me to stop being healthy because it made my brother feel bad about himself. The brother who had tormented me for over a decade, who had called me fat pig and lard bucket, who had humiliated me in front of entire cafeterias and backyard parties. That brother was now upset because I looked better than him, and my mother thought the solution was for me to destroy my own health. I pay for my own gym membership, I said slowly, with my own money. You cannot stop me from going. Sandra's eyes narrowed. I am the one paying for this house, she said, her voice dropping to a threatening tone. I pay the mortgage, the utilities, everything. If you want to continue living under my roof, you will stop this gym nonsense immediately. Otherwise, I will increase your rent so high that you will not be able to afford that precious membership anyway. She was not finished. Additionally, she continued, you will start eating dinner with the family again. Proper dinners, the food I cook. None of this ridiculous meal prep business. You will eat what everyone else eats. I looked at my mother, really looked at her perhaps for the first time in my life. I saw a woman who had never once celebrated my achievements, who had blamed me for my father's departure, who had laughed while her eldest son humiliated her youngest. I saw a woman who was now demanding that I sacrifice my health, my confidence, my hard-won self-respect, so that her favorite child would not have to feel uncomfortable. Something inside me shattered. Not my heart, because that had been broken and rebuilt too many times to count. What shattered was the last remaining thread of hope that my mother might someday love me the way she loved Derek. That thread had been thin and fraying for years, but I had clung to it nonetheless. Now it was gone. I thought about all the nights I had cried myself to sleep. I thought about standing in the cafeteria while my brother announced my humiliation to the world. I thought about the going-away party, the laughter, Sandra's cackling voice rising above all the others. I thought about Tyler's words in his car that afternoon, the words that had started my transformation. The problem is the people who made you believe it is. I stood up from my chair. No, I said. My voice was calm, steady, completely unlike the terrified boy who used to hide in his room and cry. Sandra's eyes widened. Excuse me, I said no. I looked directly at her, then at Derek, meeting both their gazes without flinching. I am not going to stop exercising. I am not going to destroy my health because Derek cannot handle looking at someone who actually takes care of themselves. I spent my entire childhood being your punching bag, being the joke of this family, and I refuse to go back to that. Not for you, not for Derek, not for anyone. Derek shot to his feet. You ungrateful little punk, he snarled. After everything Mom has done for you, you are going to disrespect her like this. I turned to face him. Everything she has done for me, I repeated. Like blaming me for Dad leaving, like laughing while you called me a fat pig in front of our entire extended family. Like telling me I deserved to be bullied because I was overweight. Those are the things she has done for me, Derek. Forgive me if I am not feeling particularly grateful. Sandra rose from her chair, her face flushed with anger. If you walk out that door, Madeline, do not bother coming back. I will not have an ungrateful, selfish child living in my house. Derek added his own threat. Yeah, and do not expect any help from us when your little gym phase ends and you get fat again. You will come crawling back and we will not be here for you. I looked at them both standing side by side, united against me as they had always been. And for the first time, I did not feel small or scared or worthless. I felt free. No, I said quietly. I was never the problem in this family. I was just the one you both needed to put down so you could feel better about yourselves. I spent 19 years being that person. I am done. I walked out of the living room, up the stairs, and into my bedroom. I pulled out my phone and called Tyler. Hey, I said when he answered. I need a place to stay for a while. Can I crash with you? Of course, man, Tyler said without hesitation. What happened? I will tell you when I get there, I replied. I am leaving tonight. I packed 2 suitcases with my clothes, my toiletries, my mini refrigerator full of meal prep containers. I grabbed the photograph of me and my father from the carnival, tucking it carefully between folded shirts. At 2:00 in the morning, while Sandra and Derek slept, I carried my belongings down the stairs out the front door and loaded them into my car. I did not leave a note. I did not say goodbye. I simply drove away from the house where I had spent 19 miserable years, and I never looked back. The first few months of independence were challenging. I stayed with Tyler and his family for 8 weeks while I searched for an affordable place of my own. Tyler's parents treated me with more kindness in those 2 months than Sandra had shown me in nearly 2 decades. They asked about my day, they congratulated me on my fitness progress, they included me in family dinners without any hidden agendas or sabotage attempts. Eventually, I found a small studio apartment about 15 minutes from the gym. It was tiny, barely 400 square feet with a kitchen the size of a closet and a bathroom where I could practically touch all 4 walls at once. But it was mine. I paid for it with my own money earned through my own work. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was completely and entirely my own. I continued working at the pizza shop, and my dedication was noticed. Within 6 months, I was promoted to shift supervisor, which came with a modest raise and more responsibilities. I threw myself into my job with the same intensity I brought to my workouts. If I was going to build a new life, I was going to build it right. The gym remained my sanctuary. Marcus continued to mentor me, pushing me to new limits, helping me compete in my first amateur bodybuilding competition. I did not win, but I placed in the top 10, which Marcus said was remarkable for a first-timer. The discipline I had developed through fitness began seeping into other areas of my life. I was more focused at work, more confident in social situations, more capable of handling stress and setbacks. I blocked Sandra and Derek on my phone and on all social media platforms. I did not want to hear their excuses or their accusations. I did not want to be drawn back into their toxic orbit. The first few weeks of no contact were harder than I expected. Despite everything, these were the people who had raised me. There were moments, usually late at night, when I wondered if I had made the right decision. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should have tried harder to work things out. But then I would remember the look on Sandra's face when she demanded I stop exercising. I would remember Derek's cruel words echoing through school cafeterias and backyard parties. And I knew I had made the only choice that would allow me to survive and thrive. Tyler remained my closest friend and greatest supporter. Whenever doubt crept in, he was there to remind me of how far I had come. Family is not about blood, he told me one evening as we sat on his back porch drinking protein shakes. Family is about who shows up for you. And those people never showed up for you, Maddie. Not once. About a year after I left, something wonderful happened. I was attending a yoga class that Marcus had recommended for flexibility and recovery. The instructor asked everyone to partner up for a stretching exercise, and I ended up paired with a woman named Jenna. She had warm brown eyes and a laugh that made everyone around her smile. We started talking after class, then grabbing smoothies together, then going on actual dates. Jenna was the first person outside of Tyler that I told my whole story to. We were sitting on a bench overlooking a small lake near her apartment, and the words just started pouring out. I told her about Sandra and Derek, about the bullying and the fat shaming and the sabotage. I told her about the night I almost gave up completely, and about the photograph that stopped me. I told her about my transformation, about Marcus and the gym, about the confrontation that led to me leaving. When I finished, Jenna was quiet for a long moment. Then she took my hand and squeezed it gently. I am so sorry you went through all of that, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But I am so incredibly proud of who you have become. You took all that pain and turned it into strength. That is not easy. That is remarkable. In that moment, I understood something important. I was worthy of love, not the conditional, manipulative love that Sandra had offered, which required me to stay small and broken so she could feel superior. Real love, the kind that celebrates your successes instead of sabotaging them. My relationship with my father also began healing during this period. I reached out to Robert for the first time in years, and to my surprise, he answered. We started having weekly video calls, rebuilding the connection that had frayed so badly after the divorce. He told me about his life in Arizona, about his regrets, about wishing he had been a better father. I told him about my journey, about leaving Sandra's house, about finding my own path. He cried when I described the going away party incident. I am so sorry, son, he said, his voice breaking. I should have been there. I should have protected you. We could not change the past, but we could build something new going forward. 2 years after I left Sandra's house, I heard news through a distant cousin who had remained in contact with both sides of the family. Derek was still unemployed, still living with Sandra, heavier than ever. Sandra herself was struggling with health issues related to her diet and sedentary lifestyle. Apparently, she had tried reaching out through various relatives, sending messages, asking me to come back to visit, to forgive and forget. I considered these requests carefully. Part of me, the part that still remembered being a little boy who just wanted his mother to love him, wanted to reconcile. But the larger part of me, the part that had worked so hard to become healthy and whole, knew that reconciliation would only be possible if Sandra and Derek acknowledged their behavior and genuinely committed to change. And based on everything I knew about them, that was never going to happen. I sent a message back through the cousin. I wish them well, I said. But I have built my own family now. I have people who love me and support me and want to see me succeed. I spent 19 years in a house where none of that was true. I am not going back. There was no anger in my words, no bitterness, no desire for revenge. I had forgiven Sandra and Derek not for their sake, but for my own. Carrying hatred is exhausting. It is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. I chose to let go of the resentment because I did not want to spend the rest of my life defined by their cruelty. Sometimes I still stand in front of the mirror after a workout and marvel at the journey. The overweight boy who cried himself to sleep is gone. In his place stands a man who knows his worth, who refuses to shrink himself to make others comfortable, who has built a life filled with genuine love and support. I learned something important through all of this. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones who hurt you the most. And walking away from them is not betrayal. It is survival. It is choosing yourself when no one else will. I also learned that your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It is determined by how you treat yourself. Sandra and Derek tried to convince me that I was worthless, that I deserved their cruelty, that I would never amount to anything. For a long time, I believed them. But the moment I started treating myself with respect, with care, with love, everything changed. Not because I lost weight or gained muscle, but because I finally understood that I deserved to be healthy and happy. If you are watching this and you are still stuck in a situation like mine, I want you to know something. It gets better. But it only gets better when you decide that you deserve better. And you do. You really do. I do not know what the future holds. Maybe Sandra will eventually come around and offer a genuine apology. Maybe Derek will grow up and take responsibility for his actions. Maybe we will find a way to have some kind of relationship again. But I'm not waiting for any of that to happen. I am moving forward with the people who love me, building a life that makes me proud. For the first time in my existence, I am excited to see what comes next. And that feeling, that hope, that sense of possibility is something no one can ever take away from me. Not anymore. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members to protect your own well-being? What helped you find the strength to put yourself first? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button so more people can find it. Subscribe to the channel if you want more stories about survival, healing, and choosing yourself. And share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than the way they are being treated. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I wish you strength on your own journey, whatever that looks like. Remember, you are worthy of love and respect no matter what anyone has told you. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.